Cornwall, where history lingers in stone and sea. We traced its haunted paths before yet shadows still remain. Now we uncover 10 more places touched by the uncanny. Jamaica Inn, Bodmin Moor. On the windswept expanse of Bodmin Moor stands Jamaica Inn, an 18th century hostelry that has long captured the imagination. Its name is entwined with tales of smuggling secrecy and survival in one of Cornwall's most remote landscapes. Yet for all its history, the inn is equally renowned for what is said to remain within its walls after dark. Reports from guests and staff alike tell of presences that move unseen. Footsteps echo along narrow corridors where no one is walking. Doors open or resist closing as though touched by an invisible hand. In the bedrooms, certain numbers carry a particular weight of reputation. Room 5, for example, is associated with the apparition of a distressed woman and the cry of her infant child heard in the stillness of night. Others have spoken of a man in a tricorn hat, glimpsed briefly as he crosses the room before vanishing through a solid door. The atmosphere extends to the inn's public rooms. Bottles have been known to fall from shelves without warning, and bar staff have described sudden movements caught at the edge of vision. In the courtyard, visitors sometimes hear the unmistakable sound of horses' hooves and carriage wheels approaching across cobblestones. Yet no carriage arrives, and the yard lies empty beneath the mist. Such accounts weave together the inn's identity, a place where past and present intermingle, and where those who once sought refuge may still linger in ways that defy easy explanation. Jamaica Inn remains one of Cornwall's most celebrated haunted sites, a destination where history is not merely remembered, but felt. Quay Cottage, Trelisic Fioc. By the wooded banks of the River Fowl stands Quay Cottage, a modest dwelling whose unassuming walls hold a reputation for quiet melancholy. Unlike the bustling Jamaica Inn, the stories here are fewer, yet they carry a note of sadness that lingers in memory. Witnesses speak of a young girl dressed in the fashion of the late 19th or early 20th century. She appears pale and subdued, her expression marked by a sorrow that time has not erased. Often she is seen standing motionless, her eyes turned to some private thought, as though waiting for a comfort that never comes. Alongside her image come the sounds of footsteps in rooms that lie empty. Those who have stayed here describe the sensation of another presence moving gently through the cottage, not threatening, but insistent, a reminder that the house is not entirely unoccupied. The combination of quiet apparition and faint sound gives the cottage an atmosphere distinct from more dramatic hauntings, less a display, more a subtle persistence. Local tradition offers little in the way of explanation. Some believe she may have been a child of the household, lost young and unwilling to leave. Others suggest she could have been a servant tied by duty or affection to the family she served. Whatever her story, she has become the defining spirit of Quay Cottage, not malicious, but a figure whose very sadness shapes the place. For visitors, the cottage is a reminder that hauntings need not be violent or theatrical. Sometimes it is the stillness of grief that lingers longest, carried across generations within the walls of a simple Cornish home. St. John the Evangelist Church. In the wooded outskirts of Camborne lies the small parish church of St. John the Evangelist. Built in the 19th century, it has long served as a place of quiet devotion for the local community, its churchyard a resting place for generations of miners and their families. By daylight, it appears as one of Cornwall's many modest churches shaped by the industry and faith of the region. Yet by night, its graveyard becomes the setting for phenomena that resist easy explanation. The most striking reports describe 3 distinct lights floating a few feet above the ground in the form of a perfect triangle. Witnesses tell of a soft, steady glow, pale blue or white, moving slowly among the graves. The lights do not flicker like lanterns, nor dart like fireflies. Instead, they hold their position as though guided by purpose. When approached, they vanish without sound, leaving the yard empty once more. Accounts span decades with multiple witnesses describing the same formation in the same place. Some recall a sudden hush falling over the grounds as the lights appeared, as if the air itself grew still. One visitor spoke of feeling both awe and unease, a sense of being watched, not with hostility, but with solemn regard. Another described the lights as almost ceremonial, as if marking out a space of their own within the consecrated ground. Explanations vary. Some attribute the phenomenon to natural gases rising from the earth, or to reflections of distant lamps distorted by mist. Others believe the lights recall much older traditions, perhaps tied to pre-Christian rites once practiced on Cornish soil. The triangular pattern, so precise and deliberate, has also been linked by some to religious symbolism, a spectral echo of the Holy Trinity. Whatever their cause, the lights have become part of the church's identity. To walk among the stones after dark is to carry the possibility that the stillness may break with a glow that hovers just beyond reach. Unlike darker hauntings of Cornwall, the experience here is less of fear than of mystery, a reminder that even in a place of prayer, the unknown may still make itself seen. Cornwall's Guesthouse St. Ives. Tucked away in the lanes of St. Ives, Cornwall's Guesthouse is an unassuming building. To most, it is simply a place to rest after exploring the beaches and galleries of this Cornish town. Its modest facade gives no hint of anything unusual. Yet, among those who have stayed here, stories circulate of nights disturbed by forces that defy ordinary explanation. The most frequently reported phenomenon concerns the televisions in the guest rooms. Time and again, visitors have returned to find them switched on at full volume, though the rooms have been empty for hours. Some guests describe being woken suddenly in the early hours, the screen blaring into the darkness only for the set to fall silent again once approached. The incidents are said to occur with such regularity, often once a week, that even the current owners, while cautious in their words, acknowledge the pattern. Other accounts tell of sharp noises echoing through the house. At night bangs, crashes the sound of something falling heavily. Guests rise to investigate, only to find everything in place, the building silent once more. On one occasion, a glass plate downstairs shattered in front of the proprietors themselves without warning or cause. The sense of unease was heightened by the fact that the event occurred in daylight with nothing to blame but an unseen hand. Some dismiss these occurrences as the quirks of an old structure, thin walls, faulty electrics, noises carried between neighboring houses. Yet those who experience them insist that they were different, louder, closer, and accompanied by a feeling of presence. A few have spoken of lying awake afterwards, unable to shake the sense that they were not alone, that unseen eyes might be watching from the corner of the room. Unlike Cornwall's ruined castles or windswept moors, Cornwall has no centuries-old legend to explain its disturbances. Its strangeness lies in the intrusion of the uncanny into the ordinary, a modern house, a familiar device, a sudden crash with no origin. Perhaps that is what makes its reputation so unsettling. For in a place where nothing remarkable should occur, the unexplained becomes all the harder to ignore. The Lost Gardens of Heligan. Among the rolling hills near St. Austell lies Heligan, one of Cornwall's most remarkable gardens. Once the pride of a great estate, it was left untended, after the First World War, when many of its gardeners went to the front and never returned. For decades, the grounds lay overgrown and forgotten until their rediscovery and restoration in the 1990s. Yet, with the revival, came stories that suggested not all of Heligan's workers had departed. Visitors and staff have spoken of a figure glimpsed in the melon garden, a man who seems to peer over flower pots as though still engaged in his duties. Dressed in plain clothing, he is often described as silent, watchful, and entirely out of step with the modern surroundings. Some believe he is the spirit of a gardener who once toiled here, reluctant to abandon his work. Elsewhere, a grey lady has been reported drifting across the front of the house, her form fleeting but distinct against the stone. In the Lost Valley, one witness told of an immense dark shape that appeared suddenly before them, blocking the path until it melted back into the trees. Others recount footsteps echoing on gravel walks or doors that open and close with no one near at hand. For those who tend the gardens today, the most unsettling areas are the rockery, the melon garden, and the fruit store, places where, according to long tradition, staff prefer to work in pairs, and some refuse to linger after dusk. The origins of these tales are uncertain. Some link them to the tragedy of the estate's men, lost in war, their presence remembered in more than name. Others see them as the lingering echo of centuries of domestic service lives bound so closely to the soil that they remain long after death. The gardens themselves embody this layering of history, overgrown, forgotten, restored, and haunted not only by memory, but by movement and sound. Heligan today is one of Cornwall's great attractions, visited by thousands each year. Yet amid its beauty lies an undercurrent of unease, a reminder that behind the lush greenery are shadows that even restoration cannot dispel. To walk through its paths is to sense not only renewal, but also the persistence of lives cut short, still tending their duties in the quiet corners of a once-lost garden. Tate St. Ives, Porthmeor Beach. On the edge of Porthmeor Beach, the white curves of Tate St. Ives stand in striking contrast to the fishing cottages of the old town. This gallery, opened in the 1990s, celebrates Cornwall's modern artistic heritage. Yet beneath its bright spaces lies a darker memory, for the site once held the town's gasworks. It is to that past some believe that the building owes its reputation for haunting. Accounts center on the figure of a man in a dirty blue boiler suit, seen by staff and visitors alike. He appears suddenly in the quieter corners of the gallery, his presence felt before it is seen, a drop in temperature, a prickle of unease, and then the fleeting impression of a workman standing close at hand. Most unnerving are the reports of a cold hand resting on the shoulder, firm enough to startle, yet leaving nothing when the visitor turns. The connection to the old gasworks has become the most accepted explanation. Industrial sites were often dangerous places, and accidents were not uncommon. Local conjecture holds that the figure may be the ghost of a worker who met his end, here bound still to the site of his labor. Whether that is true or not, the detail of his appearance, the boiler suit, the rough and stained clothing, gives the impression of a life cut short while engaged in heavy work. Gallery officials are cautious when asked. Some say they have never witnessed anything themselves, while others acknowledge that unexplained incidents have occurred. A booking coordinator, when pressed, admitted that stories had reached him over the years, though none he could confirm personally. For visitors, however, the experience needs no confirmation. The sudden chill, the fleeting figure, and the hand that should not be there are enough to leave a lasting impression. What distinguishes Tate St. Ives from other Cornish hauntings is the juxtaposition, a bright modern gallery filled with art and light, yet carrying the weight of an industrial past. In this place, culture and memory overlap, and even in a town renowned for creativity, shadows from the past may still reach forward. White Hart Hotel Hayley. In the busy square at Hayley stands the White Hart Hotel, a building that has served travelers for generations. Its Georgian facade and central position give it the air of a respectable coaching inn, a place of welcome and routine. Yet behind the bright windows, certain rooms are spoken of in quieter tones, none more so than Room 9. Guests who have stayed there describe a heaviness in the atmosphere, a sense of being watched, even when alone. Some accounts tell of figures glimpsed at the edge of vision, a man standing in the corner of the room, or the impression of movement across the bed when no one else is present. Others report sudden changes in temperature, with the air turning icy in an instant, only to return to normal as quickly as it came. Although the precise identity of the haunting remains unclear, the White Hart has long been connected with the history of the town itself. Hayley grew as an industrial port, its foundries and shipyards drawing workers and merchants through the hotel's doors. It is easy to imagine that among the many who passed through, some left an imprint too deep to fade. The building's age and its central role in local life give weight to the idea that its walls may still carry echoes of those who stayed within them. Staff acknowledge that Room 9 carries a particular reputation, and while explanations vary from drafts and faulty fittings to the tricks of imagination, the persistence of the stories ensures the room remains a subject of fascination. For some visitors, the possibility of a night disturbed by the unknown is part of the attraction. For others, the thought is unsettling enough to request a different key at the desk. The White Hart is not a ruin nor a relic. It continues to function as a living part of the town, welcoming guests, much as it has for over 2 centuries. Yet within its ordinary routines lies the suggestion that history has not entirely departed. In the silence of Room 9, when footsteps sound on an empty floor and the air turns suddenly cold, one is reminded that even in the heart of a working town, the past may still keep its watch. The oldest house, St. Ives. In the heart of St. Ives along Fish Street stands a dwelling known simply as the oldest house. Its low beams, narrow staircase, and uneven walls mark it out as a survivor from centuries past, a reminder of the fishing community that once crowded these lanes. Time has given it charm, but also, according to those who have lived and visited here, an atmosphere touched by the uncanny. Reports speak of footsteps sounding across the floors when the rooms lie empty, steady enough to suggest a person moving deliberately from one space to another. Chairs are said to shift position without human hand, sometimes with a scrape loud enough to be heard in the next room. The disturbances are not constant, but when they occur, they leave little doubt in the minds of those who experience them. Perhaps the strangest detail is the presence of a smell, an odor sharp and animal-like, reminiscent of a wet dog, though no such creature is present. Residents have described it appearing suddenly, filling a room without warning before fading just as quickly. Unlike sounds or sights, which may be dismissed as the imagination, the smell is harder to ignore, a physical intrusion into the space. Explanations have been sought, but none prove satisfactory. Some suggest that the house, being so old, simply carries the traces of countless occupants over the years, human and otherwise. Others prefer to believe that one particular spirit remains restless in the home it once knew. With no clear historical figure attached, the stories have grown, instead, into folklore, the sense that the oldest house in the town carries with it the oldest shadows. For visitors, the appeal lies in this very ambiguity. To step inside is to enter not just a building, but a layered past where the everyday lives of fishermen and their families overlap with something less tangible. The footsteps, the moving chair, the sudden odor, each leaves its mark, small but persistent, adding to the house's reputation. The oldest house may not offer a single tragic story or a named ghost, yet its enduring unease reminds us that history clings most strongly in the places where life was lived most fully. St. Nectan's Kieve Tintagel, not far from Tintagel, where Arthurian legend clings to the cliffs, a waterfall tumbles through a rocky cleft into a deep, mossy basin. This is St. Nectan's Kieve, a place long held sacred in Cornish tradition. Pilgrims and poets alike have come here drawn by the sense that the glen is more than mere landscape, yet alongside its beauty run tales of voices and visions that do not belong to the living. Visitors have reported hearing sounds that echo strangely through the gorge, chanting as though from a hidden choir, sobbing like grief carried on the water, and at times mocking laughter that rises and falls without source. Most striking are the apparitions said to accompany these sounds, hooded figures glimpsed near the falls, moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm before vanishing into spray and shadow. Some accounts even tell of men kneeling by the water's edge, silent and immobile, disappearing when approached. The associations with St. Nectan himself, a 6th century hermit saint believed to have lived nearby, have deepened the mystery. Local lore suggests that the site has long been a place of retreat and devotion where earthly and spiritual worlds meet. Whether the figures are linked to ancient religious practice, to wandering souls, or to the imagination stirred by nature, no answer has proved sufficient. The atmosphere of the Kieve itself encourages belief. The path winds through woodland, heavy with ivy and fern, the air cool and perpetually damp. The sound of water muffles footsteps, while the play of light through mist and spray can easily deceive the eye. Yet those who have had the experience remain certain what they saw and heard was no mere trick of nature. Today, visitors still leave offerings near the waterfall, ribbons, stones, and written prayers as though acknowledging the presence of something beyond themselves. St. Nectan's Kieve endures as both a beauty spot and a site of unease, where voices from the unseen seem to rise with the waters, reminding all who come that Cornwall's legends are not confined to the page, but live on in place and sound. St. Nicholas Chapel, the island St. Ives, on the headland, known as the island overlooking the harbour of St. Ives, stands a small stone chapel dedicated to St. Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors. Simple in design, exposed to the wind and sea, it has guided generations who look to the horizon for livelihood and for safe return. Within its walls, prayers have been offered for centuries, and with those prayers, some say, a presence has remained. Witnesses speak of monks appearing in daylight, a small procession making its way towards the chapel. Robed and silent, they pass calmly through the closed doorway and vanish within. Their movements are neither sudden nor alarming. Rather, they seem to embody a quiet purpose, as if continuing devotions begun long ago. For those who have seen them, the effect is less of fear than of awe, a reminder of the sacred weight that still clings to this place. Unlike many Cornish hauntings, the atmosphere here is not of unrest, but of continuity. The chapel has stood through storms and centuries, rebuilt and restored, yet always keeping its role as a guardian on the headland. The monk's appearance, if such it is, seems to reinforce that role, watchful, protective, a sign that devotion has not ended with time. Visitors often describe a profound stillness upon entering the chapel, as though the clamor of the town and the sea beyond is held at bay. Candles flicker in the dim light, their glow recalling all those who sought comfort before setting sail. To imagine the silent monks within this setting is to feel that history has not vanished, but walks quietly beside us. As the last of Cornwall's 10 haunted places in our journey, St. Nicholas Chapel offers not a tale of terror, but of peace. In its presence, the past is not threatening, but sustaining a reminder that what lingers from former lives may sometimes be benevolent, keeping vigil over the living. High above the harbour, the chapel stands as both landmark and legacy, a place where memory and faith continue to meet. Our journey through Cornwall ends here, but the stories live on. Have you ever had an unexplained experience? Share it below and tell us which county or city you're watching from. For more of Britain's haunted heritage, subscribe and stay with us here on Creepy Experience.